The night I chose silence, everything started to speak. The clock, the wind, the street outside, each one kept time with the truth I did not want to face. I thought I could hide behind quiet, but quiet has a way of pulling secrets into the light. I keep my face out of sight, like it is a window with the curtains drawn. People think that means I have nothing to say. They are wrong. Words move inside me like a storm that never stops. I carry them from room to room, careful not to drop any, careful not to let one break and cut my hands. Tonight the storm grew louder. It began the moment my phone buzzed and his name lit up the screen. I stared at it like it was a door I could not open, a door that knew my touch too well. 3 rings passed. The 4th felt like a hand around my throat. I let it die, and with it, the last easy breath I had left. I know the story they tell about me, that I turned cold, that I walked away, that I wanted more than I was given. But no one says what I lost to get here. No one tells how I traded sleep for a promise that never came true. When I close my eyes, I see the first crack, a photo with half a smile and half a lie. You would not notice it if you did not know where to look. I know the shape of his voice when it bends the truth. It tilts to one side, soft as sugar, sweet enough to make the hurt go down slow. He used that voice on me for years, like a song that makes you dance even when your feet are bleeding. I did not stop dancing. Not at first. I told myself this is love. Love is patient. Love is flawed. Love is work. But there is a kind of work that empties you. You show up every day and leave with less than you brought. You set the table and eat your own heart. So I set a new rule. I would not beg. I would not explain. I would not turn myself into proof. If he wanted to see me, he would have to look without my light guiding him. Days passed. He did not look. Nights passed. He did not look. Still, I waited, because waiting is a habit you learn young and forget late. Then came the message. Just 4 words. We need to talk. People say those words like they are kind, like they are giving a gift. But what they mean is I am about to break something. What they mean is please hold this while I walk away. I did not answer. I put the phone face down, like a mirror I could not stand. I walked the small circle of my room. I traced the same line on the floor with my steps until it felt like a border. On one side was the person who said yes to everything. On the other side was a stranger with my heartbeat, learning how to say no. I stood on the line and shivered. Memory is a patient thief. It waits at the edge of the bed and pulls one scene after another from your pillow. A laugh in a kitchen. A hand catching a falling cup. A late ride home with the windows down and a song that felt like a sign. All of it so bright it makes your eyes water. Then come the other scenes. The ones you hid behind the good ones. The message he never answered. The plan he forgot. The story that changed its shape each time you asked. I tried to make them match. I tried to believe both at once. Love and hurt, truth and almost truth. But the mind cannot hold to skies without tearing. I felt the tear tonight. It was small, but I heard it. It sounded like fabric caught on a nail. It sounded like my name said by someone who no longer knew me. I did not cry. I did not rage. I did something harder. I stayed still. I let the storm pass through me instead of chasing it. I thought of a promise I made to myself long ago, when I was nothing but a quiet child with big eyes. When the day comes that you must choose between being loved and being safe, choose being safe. No one will clap. No one will write a song. But you will sleep. You will keep your soul. The phone buzzed again. I watched it, not like prey, not like a test, but like a small machine that did not own me. I felt my breath fall into a slow, even rhythm. I counted 4 in, 4 out, like waves that do not ask permission to reach the shore. I spoke out loud though no one was there to hear me. I said, if you want to talk, use the truth. The words were simple. They were not heavy. They did not try to sound wise. They were a soft door closing. They were a light turned off in a room I no longer live in. Somewhere inside, a lock clicked. Somewhere else, a key fell into my palm. I did not know what it opened yet, but it was mine. I held it tight, and for the first time in months, the storm went quiet enough for me to hear my own name the way I say it, steady, sure, and afraid. The silence after a storm is not peace. It is the ache of broken branches, the smell of wet earth, the weight of clouds that still hang low. That was what I felt inside me the next day, quiet, but not calm. A hush that carried the memory of thunder. I walked through my morning as though nothing had changed. I poured coffee. I opened curtains. I moved my body through familiar spaces like an actor in a role I no longer believed. But everything around me seemed to know what I had done. The cup was heavier, the curtains slower to move, the air thick with questions. I thought silence would free me, but freedom is not the absence of sound. Freedom is the presence of truth. And truth, I was learning, is never gentle when you have ignored it too long. I remembered the first time he made me feel invisible. It was a party, one of those nights filled with too many lights and too many names. I stood beside him, waiting to be part of his story, but when people asked, "Who is she?" his answer was softer than the music, almost lost in the air. He called me someone instead of the name I had given him to hold. I laughed then, a quick, nervous sound, because it was easier to laugh than to bleed in public. But the cut was real. Small, sharp, and quiet enough to hide, but real. I carried it with me like a folded note in my pocket. Over time, the note grew heavy with new words, forgotten calls, shifting plans. The way his eyes searched for something behind me when I was right there. Every moment wrote another line. And still I stayed, because I believed love was a language you could learn if you studied hard enough. I kept studying until the letters blurred. Now, standing in the middle of my room with my phone still face down, I understood something I had refused to see before. Love is not proven by how much pain you can hold. It is not measured by how quietly you accept being unseen. Love is not a cage you decorate with flowers to make it bearable. Yet I had lived inside that cage for so long that my own reflection had learned to bow. Even now, as the key in my palm pressed into my skin, I felt the pull of old habits whispering, "Answer him. Forgive him. Try again." Habits are cruel teachers. They demand loyalty even when the lesson is wrong. I closed my eyes and listened. Not to the whisper, not to the ghost of his voice, but to the deeper sound I had always ignored, the steady beat of my own heart. It was not begging. It was not afraid. It was asking me with patient strength, if not now, then when? I picked up the phone, not to answer, but to look. The screen glowed with messages that stacked on top of each other, each one shorter, sharper than the last. "Why are you silent? Don't do this. You're overreacting." Words meant to pull me back into the old dance, the same rhythm of guilt and apology that had worn me thin. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. Familiarity can trick you into thinking it is love. But tonight, it looked like chains. I set the phone down again, slower this time, with no fear in the motion. Outside my window, the street was empty, washed clean by the rain that had passed. Streetlights shivered against the wet ground, their glow stretching into broken shapes. I watched them for a long time, until I realized what felt different. The storm inside me was no longer louder than the world outside. For once, I could hear the hum of traffic, the low whistle of wind through wires, the small life of the night that went on, indifferent to my heartbreak. The world was not waiting on me to collapse. The world was moving forward, and maybe, just maybe, I could too. I whispered into the empty room, "I will not be someone." The words did not echo. They did not need to. They landed inside me like seeds pressed into soil, waiting for their time to grow. For the first time, I did not want his reply, his excuse, his half-love. For the first time, I wanted something larger, the strength to become my own answer. The night grew deeper, but I felt lighter. Every minute that passed was a quiet rebellion, proof that I could exist without bending toward him. My reflection in the dark glass of the window looked strange, like someone I had not met before, someone who stood taller, even faceless, even unseen. And in that shadowed version of me, I caught a glimpse of the truth. I was never meant to be hidden. The hardest part of leaving is not the door you close, it is the silence that follows it. A silence that presses against your skin like water, reminding you that you are no longer breathing the same air you once shared. That night, the silence became my shadow. It followed me through each corner of the room, waiting, watching, daring me to answer the phone or slip back into the comfort of old chains. But comfort, I realized, was a liar. Comfort was the poison I had swallowed for years because it was easier than tasting the bitterness of truth. Now that I had spit it out, my mouth burned with something new. Hunger. Hunger for honesty. Hunger for myself. It is strange how memories shift when you look at them from the other side. I used to replay the sweet moments, the laughter, the warmth, the soft touches that promised forever. They were the anchors that kept me tied when the storms came. But as I sat in that room, I understood those anchors were made of glass. They looked strong, but they cut me every time I tried to hold on. I saw those moments differently now. The laughter was laced with doubt. The warmth had conditions hidden beneath it. The promises had expiration dates written in ink I had been too blind to read. It was like watching an old movie you once loved, only to notice the cracks in the story, the lines that no longer fit, the lies you once mistook for art. My phone lit up again. Not with words this time, but with a picture. A photo we had taken months ago. One of those forced smiles where you pretend you are not breaking. His caption said, "This was real. Don't erase us." For a moment, I almost reached for it, almost let myself believe the picture told the truth. But then I remembered the weight behind that smile, the silence that stretched between us the moment the camera clicked. Photos are tricks. They capture the light, but never the shadow. And our love had been more shadow than light. I turned the phone over once more, letting the screen face the table. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the power of choosing stillness. Do you know how hard it is to choose nothing? To not answer, to not explain, to not defend yourself. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that every muscle in your body wants to step back, but instead, you let yourself lean forward into the unknown. That was the cliff I stood on. And for once, I let the wind carry me instead of clinging to the rocks. But silence does not mean emptiness. The silence was a teacher. It made me hear things I had buried under his voice. My own anger, my own grief, my own strength. It reminded me of the years I had spent bending myself into shapes that did not belong to me. The nights I bit my tongue until it bled because my truth did not fit his comfort. The mornings I woke up already tired because carrying his excuses was heavier than carrying my own body. Each memory was a weight sliding off my shoulders, one by one, until I felt my spine straighten. The clock ticked past midnight, and I realized something. Survival is not the same as living. I had survived him, survived the storms, survived the breaking. But now came the harder part, learning how to live without the cage. Living means more than walking away. Living means choosing your own voice over the echo of someone else's. It means building a life so wide, so full, that no one can shrink it with 4 words or a broken promise. I stood by the window again, and this time I opened it. The night air rushed in, cold and sharp, but real. It filled my lungs in a way his half-love never had. I whispered to the wind, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." The words felt raw, almost clumsy, but they carried weight. They carried fire, and in that moment, I understood why the storm had come. Not to break me, not to punish me, but to clear the skies so I could finally see the stars I had been blind to. They were there all along, waiting for me to look up instead of down. For the first time in years, I did. And what I saw was not his shadow, not his story, but the faint outline of my own freedom, written in constellations that had my name on them. Morning does not ask permission to arrive. It spills through curtains, soft and golden, daring you to face it. When dawn crept into my room, it touched the places where the night had left scars: the phone on the table, the clothes on the chair, the lines under my eyes. But it also touched something new, the quiet strength I had grown in the dark. For the first time in years, the light did not feel like judgment. It felt like proof. Proof that I had survived the storm and woken up whole, even if not the same. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching dust dance in the sunlight. Tiny flecks floating without fear, carried by air I could not see but could feel. That was what I wanted for myself: not to be trapped, not to be defined by weight, but to float, to exist without asking permission, to move without apology. For so long, I had measured my worth by how tightly I could hold someone who was already slipping away. Now I wanted to measure it by how freely I could let go. The phone lay silent, but I did not touch it. I did not need to. His words, his absence, his shadow, none of it mattered anymore. Love does not disappear just because you stop answering. It lingers like smoke in the walls, like perfume in an empty coat. But over time, even smoke fades. Even perfume loses its hold. What remains is the shape of you, unmasked and hidden. I thought of all the times I had silenced myself for him, all the ways I had bent until I nearly broke. And yet, here I was, unbroken, breathing, stronger than I had ever been. That was the part he never understood. You cannot erase someone who has learned to draw themselves again. I stepped into the day, barefoot, my skin prickled by the cool floor beneath me. Each step felt like a claim, a declaration. This space is mine, this body is mine, this life is mine. There was no need for grand speeches or revenge. The victory was in the living. The victory was in the small acts: making coffee, opening windows, letting the morning in. Every ordinary thing I did was extraordinary because I was doing it for myself. The world outside was awake: no cars, voices, laughter in the distance. Life did not pause for heartbreak, and that was its gift. I realized I did not need to rebuild the past or rewrite what had already been lost. I only needed to step into the present with both hands open. A new beginning does not announce itself with trumpets. It whispers through the quiet courage of moving forward. And so I whispered back. I whispered promises, not to him, not to anyone else, but to myself. I promised never to dim my light just to make someone else comfortable. I promised never to confuse silence with peace again. I promised to trust my own heart, even when it beat against the rhythm of someone else's song. These promises were not heavy. They did not feel like chains. They felt like wings. The day stretched ahead of me, uncertain but wide. And for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid of uncertainty. I was not afraid of being faceless, of being unseen. Because I had discovered the truth, even in shadows, I could define myself. Even in silence, I could speak. Even in loss, I could begin again. I turned the key in my palm one last time, the one I had imagined unlocking me the night before. And I realized it was not meant for a door behind me. It was meant for the doors ahead. 1,000 of them. Some would lead to quiet rooms, some to wide open fields, some to storms I had yet to face. But each one would be mine to open, mine to walk through, mine to leave behind if I chose. And with that, I stood taller, faceless yet full, unseen yet unafraid. Because endings are not the death of us, they are the soil where beginnings take root. And I was ready, at last, to grow.